Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is What If Naruto Got Harem with Haku x Mikoto x Kushina Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Konohagakure Night Time. The village hidden in the leaves, founded by the Senju, the Uchiha and the Uzumaki clans, respective leaders. It's known to produce some of the strongest ninjas of the world: Senju Tobirama, Senju Hiroshima, Uchiha Madara, Sarutobi Hiruzen, Danzo Shimura, Tsukumo Hatake, Jiraiya, Orochimaru, and Tsunade, Uchiha Itachi, and Namikaze Minato. While the village after the Third Ninja Wars is enjoying a peaceful night, one Minato Namikaze is holding on for his dear life from threat only men can face, and anyone that would be hearing his screams would be praying for his life because they know what he is going through. In a hidden cave north from the village, Minato Namikaze, if I get through this alive, I am going to kill you for putting me through this mess when I recoverrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr her twin children while squeezing Minato's hand. Take it easy, Kushina. I'm here for you. You just need to calm down and take deep breaths and push the baby out. Minato soothed his wife, ignoring the crushing of his hand by his wife by screaming on the inside as Jiraiya stands behind Minato, trying and failing from keeping the smile on his face. Minato, will you shut up? You don't know what I'm going through now. Just shut up, screamed Kushina. Congratulations, ma'am, here is your children, said Tsunade, tending to Kushina. Look, Minato, aren't they beautiful? Replies a very tired Kushina. Not as beautiful as you look right now, says a very proud Minato. Congrats, Gaki, on both the resistance from an angry Kushina and the mini brats, but what's up with Naruto? His hair has black strips and is a lot spikier, and is that a tail? Jiraiya asks as he notices some odd things about Naruto, and as he reaches over to pull it, the baby starts crying. Jiraiya, let go of my son's tail or I will kill you where you stand, exclaimed Kushina, after which Jiraiya quickly let go and the wailing stopped and she hands the children to Tsunade. An Anbu appears in the cave. Hokage-sama, the council wishes to see you on recent developments. As he says this, he motions to the twins and Kushina scowls as she notices this. How in the nine hells did they know you just gave birth, Kushina? Asks Tsunade. I don't know, but I'm going to find out right now, says Minato, but as he is about to leave, a masked man appeared in the room and shushined out with Kushina, but nobody does anything as the shock of some enemy finding out of the place freezes Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Minato, but soon snap out of their daze and rush to find Kushina once they heard the roar of the Kyuubi no Kitsune and assumed the worst for Kushina. A few moments before, with Kushina and the masked man. Why are you doing this? Kushina cried. This world has become nothing, a hate-infested hell, so I'm going to remove it from existence. The masked man replied. To do this, I'm going to need power, so Kyuubi, come on out of there. At this point, the masked man and Kushina make eye contact and she notices that this masked assailant possesses the Sharingan. The Kyuubi's chakra completely surrounds her, and then she feels the pain of having the fox ripped from her body. Weakened after the forced extraction, Kushina tries to stall for help. Wait. And masked man directs his attention to her after placing the fox under his illusion. Amazing, you Uzumaki are really something, to be able to survive the Kyuubi ripped from you. Then turning his attention back to the fox, he commands it. Now, Kyuubi, since you free of your prison, why don't you destroy it so you never have to go back there again? And the Kyuubi happily obliges by striking its claw at Kushina, only to roar when he didn't feel the resulting gush under its paw. In a yellow flash, Minato saved Kushina from instant death and said, Kushina, I'm taking you somewhere safe for now, okay? Kushina just nods her head weakly on his shirt, while murmuring thanks to, and with another flash, they leave the not-so-hidden cave. Minato then reappears and confronts the villain. Who are you? Why are you doing this? Tell me. Well, since you ask so nicely, I don't think so, replies the masked man. Minato's eyes narrowed in annoyance and anger at the reply and responded, fine. Then I'll just beat it out of you. After that, Minato let loose one of his special kunai, but was shocked to see the kunai phasing right through his opponent. What the hell? Minato thought in surprise. The masked man suddenly warps to Minato's location, and Minato feels distortion right in front of him and threw a kunai in a different direction in order to analyze his opponent's technique. Just as Minato appears where his kunai was thrown, a warp suddenly appears out of nowhere and reveals the masked man. Damn, it appears that he has even better capabilities in time-space ninjutsu than me. It's going to come down to whose attack is faster, thought Minato. Let's end this now, spoke Minato. Couldn't agree more, replied the masked man. As they charged each other, Minato threw another kunai and readied a head-sized Rasengan. The kunai once again phased through the masked man. The masked man was getting ready to grab Minato to end it all. He thought, victory is mine, but he felt a Rasengan attacking him from behind unexpectedly. Guah! He screamed in pain and was on his knees. As the assailant was getting up, Minato suddenly appeared before him with a kunai in hand. How did he get right next to me? Thought the man in fright. Flashback no jutsu. As the Rasengan exploded upon contact, Minato took his chance and marked the masked man with the Hiraishin formula. Kai, hey, so now what you going to try to take Kyuubi away from me, said the masked man. No, I've already done so through a contract break seal that I placed on you, said Minato. Grr. Fourth. You may have beaten me today, but I swear that I will always get what I want, one way or another. With that, the masked man warps away, leaving Minato to deal with freshly exorcised and very angry Kyuubi. Minato quickly teleports to his wife's location, then to his children's location to make his family whole. Minato takes Kushina to their children as Sarutobi takes his place in battle, and Minato makes a decision that will change not only his life, but the lives of his family. Kushina, I'm going to have to use the dead demon seal on Naruto and Naomi. I'll seal the yin chakra in Naomi because she's a girl and we can train her early so that she can control the fox's chakra like you did, while I'll seal the fox's yang chakra into Naruto, and we don't need to train him because the yang is less tameable than the yin, but I'm sure that if Naruto inherited your never give up, he will outwill the hatred of the yang and control the yang part. What are you talking about? These are my children, Minato. I won't let you turn them into a Jinchuruki so that in the end, they can receive the abuse of the villagers. I won't let you, shouted a very rebellious Kushina while she snatched her children from Tsunade. How they can sleep peaceful through all this noise is beyond me, was the thought of one very shocked Tsunade after she heard the plan. Also listening to the plan was one Sarutobi Hiruzen, who left Jiraiya to fight the fox, made a slight alteration to that plan when he said, Minato, you're still young, in charge, and you just had children while I'm getting old and past my prime. The village will need someone as strong and independent as you, not a withering deceitful old fool. I'll do the sealing while you and Kushina remain with the children and have the village see them as heroes. Now I must go join my wife in the afterlife, said Sarutobi, but Kushina still insists. No, you will not turn them into Jinchuruki while I'm still conscious. I won't let you. Kushina, he has to be able to protect the village, and it's one's duty as Hokage to protect his village, the same village that I want my kids to grow in with their parents watching over them, replies Minato. Then he stops as he notices Kushina calm down. All right, Minato, but I still don't like it. If anything goes bad, I blame you, says Kushina as exhaustion takes over her. Minato grimly takes both children in his arms and appears next to Hiruzen, who teleports both of them to the battlefield where their shinobi are fighting against the fox. Jiraiya, while fighting, notices them and asks, Sensei, Minato, what's going on? What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be with Kushina? Then he notices the children in Minato's hands and comes to a conclusion on what's happening. Then he looks at Minato with a serious face, who nods, then asks, who's gonna do it? The third Hokage. At first it was me that was going to do it, but then I realized I have a family to look after and Sarutobi offered his help. Minato replied solemnly and Jiraiya looks over to his sensei to ask for his opinion, which he got by a nod of the head and his sensei's words. Jiraiya, please distract the fox while I summon the Shinigami over to this realm as Minato prepares his children for this sacrifice. Hi sensei. As that was said, Hiruzen went through hand signs for that jutsu and as he was done, the Shinigami appeared and with its intimidating figure he spoke. What is your reason for summoning me ninjin? I have paperwork to finish and souls to torture. Shinigami-sama, I am Sarutobi Hiruzen of the Leaf Village and I ask for your help in sealing the fox's yin chakra into the girl and its yang chakra into the boy, thus making them respective Jinchuruki of the Leaf Village, spoke a very intimidated Hiruzen, and as he said this, the Shinigami formerly known as King Yama, looks at Naruto, notices he looks very familiar. What's this? He looks just like Goku and his tail further confirms my claim. And what's that? A dormant yet strong when unleashed Saiyan blood. I'll help him there. With that thought, his eyes glowed behind his mask and he made Naruto's Saiyan blood dominant among the Uzumaki and Namikaze blood, so he will be a full Saiyan with his parents' DNA in his genetic reading. There, that should do it. Now when the time comes, I'll allow Goku permission to stay in the boy's mind to train him till the age of 15. Now on to the main reason I was summoned. You know the cost of one summoning me for the task. Are you ready to make payment with the intended price? Asked the Shinigami as he drew his knife from his mouth. Yes, I do, and I am willing to give my life for the exchange, replied Hiruzen. Then it shall be done, he said as he cornered the fox and separated the yin and yang chakra, sealed tea in their hosts respectively, and after that was done, he took Hiruzen's life. Cough cough Minato. I know you will make a good cage for the village. Cough wheeze, do anything you must cough to protect it as a proud cage would, and with that, his life ended. Of course, Sandame, I would do as you ask, as respect to your dying wish and protect the village with the best of my ability, said Minato with his children back in his hands. Then he looked over at Naomi and said, I'll do everything I can to make the people of this village happy, and I'll start training Naomi to be strong enough to handle the foxes chakra at the age of 3 and make sure she's strong enough to protect herself and the world, because I know for sure that she is the prophesized child, and he remembered how he knew about the prophecy. Flashback no jutsu. Minato, the toads told me a prophecy some time ago about a warrior of pure heart and fueled by rage shall be born of 2 powerful ninja, and shall bring peace to the world or utterly destroy it, and from what I've noticed it could be one of the children that Kushina is about to give birth to, Jiraiya says. Minato asks, if you're sure, then which one, Naruto or Naomi? I should be sure so that I can start their training early. Jiraiya replies, I think Naomi would be the child of the prophecy because she will have both yours and Kushina's chakra in her and the Kyuubi no Yoko's yin sealed in her as well. That makes perfect sense, but I won't let Kushina know about it, Minato replies. It would be our little secret, says Jiraiya with a bug grin, as Minato grins as well. Kai. And with that thought, he left to Kushina reporting the news, wondering what happened to the masked man and why he attacked Konoha in the first place. 5 years later. It is the 5th anniversary of the Kyuubi's attack and defeat at the hands of the 4th Hokage, Minato Namikaze. There is a festival to commence this great event that is usually held the night of the date, and everyone is extremely happy on this day, well, almost everyone. The soul that was unhappy on this day was none other than Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, firstborn of the 4th Hokage and the Red Death. He has midnight black, spiky hair and a monkey tail swirling behind him. As to why he is unhappy at this moment, Naruto is currently alone in his room, while his parents are training his sister to be a ninja. It all started 2 years ago. Flashback no jutsu. Just as Minato said, he along with Kushina started training Naomi in the family ninja arts at 3 years old. Naruto was ecstatic. He, along with his sister, would finally start to learn about cool ninja tricks from their parents. Hi 2-chan, I'm ready to start learning how to be a ninja, shouted a hyperactive black-haired boy. Sorry, Naruto, but your mother and I need to train your sister because of a very important circumstance. But 2-chan, I wanna learn how to be a cool ninja like you and Ka-chan. Naruto begins to beg desperately, please, I'll do any and everything you ask, and I wanna ma. Naruto, listen to your father. If he says we need to train your sister first, then you will obey that wish. Yes, Ka-chan, replied the depressed black-haired boy. With that, Naruto decided to go to his room in the hopes that maybe his parents will reconsider over the next day or so. Unfortunately for Naruto, his parents had given him the same answer they had given him the first time he asked about training a few days later. Naruto, then, decided to train in secret so he wouldn't fall behind his sister. He was currently working on his taijutsu when someone made their presence known to the Saiyan. Hello, Naruto-sama, what are you doing out here all alone? I would have thought that you would be with our family. Naruto then got a depressed aura around him. Oh, hi Itachi, 2-chan and Ka-chan are busy training Naomi Nei-chan, Naruto replies to the now revealed Itachi. Really? Without you? Replied a surprised Itachi. Naruto suddenly picked himself up, loudly proclaiming, it's alright, and I'm still going to train so I don't fall behind Naomi Nei-chan. Hey, Naruto, if you're interested I could help you train when I'm available. Itachi didn't even get to complete his sentence when Naruto interrupted him. Really? At Itachi's nod Naruto started to bounce all over the place in happiness. From that point on, Itachi trained with Naruto whenever he could. Naruto had changed a lot since then. He practically stopped asking his parents for training, seeing as they told him no every single time. It was tough for Naruto since he couldn't rely on his parents for help, especially when Naruto got interested in sealing not long after he started his training with Itachi. He had to borrow the books from his father's study in order to learn the basics. He was proud to say that after 2 years of study on sealing, Naruto was low chunin. He had high genin chakra reserves for his age, but it didn't really compare to his sister's low jonin reserves. Naomi would be a chakra powerhouse when she was older, especially with the training she was receiving from both their parents. That thought had brought a frown to the boy's face. He wanted to know why his parents were training his sister and only his sister, which he thought was completely unfair. Naruto thought about this many times on his way home. Home. Was it really a home where your parents practically have nothing to do with you and spend all their time on a sibling? As he walked through door it was absolutely silent. His parents and sister were probably out in the family training grounds or out somewhere in the village having their family bonding time. Having completed his daily personal training he decided to go to bed early. He would have never suspected that what was going to happen tonight was going to change not only his life, but also the entire elemental nations. Later that night, in Naruto's mindscape, Naruto woke up in a dark, wet sewer. Where the hell am I? Naruto thought. Naruto saw some huge structure off in the distance, and as he got closer to it the more apparent it became to him that it was a cage. Naruto heard a malevolent chuckle coming from within the cage, and at the same time giant, red-slitted eyes opened up and looked directly at him. Heh heh heh, so, my container finally decides to come pay me a visit. A malevolent voice spoke as Naruto listened to the voice. He could just barely make out a giant animal-like figure with 9 tails. He had no more time to look when a huge furry hand slammed down where he had been only a few seconds before. Insolent little monkey, you should have let me, the great Kyuubi, end you right there. At least I would have been able to escape your body and rip the other half of my chakra that your father sealed in your accursed sister. Naruto went wide-eyed hearing this. Was this why he had heard some of the villagers talking about demons and foxes when he was in the area? Because he had the Kyuubi sealed in him. If so, why did his parents never tell him? Did his sister know? Naruto wasn't able to think any more on the matter because he felt a cold death-like presence around him. That is quite enough of you, Kyuubi. Shinigami, the death god, faded into appearance. I believe I have a few things to discuss with the boy, so go back to sleep. With that, the Kyuubi suddenly went to sleep within his cage. Shinigami-sama, I truly do hope that you're not here to take my soul or anything like that. The Shinigami just chuckles, although it sounds very eerie. No, Naruto, I don't plan to take your soul, yet. I actually wanted to speak to you about learning what you are, and how to use your unique abilities. I'm interested, but what's the catch? I doubt you would do this out of the goodness of your heart, replied Naruto. Heh, you're very sharp, Naruto. It's a shame that your parents have been so stuck on your sibling to notice your impressive potential, but you're right. I'm not doing this for nothing. Naruto's eyes narrowed at the mention of his parents' favoritism with his sister. I want you to use your gifts, should you accept my offer, to hunt down a few people for me. These people have each found their own versions of extending their own lives, which is something that goes against my design. Everything in life has an end, and I do not like people playing with what that. Shinigami-sama, I humbly accept your most gracious offer, replied Naruto. Excellent, Naruto. I look forward to what you will be capable of in the future, and now for my end of the bargain. The Shinigami snapped his fingers, and then there was an extremely bright light. As the light subsided, a man, around 5 feet 9, with spiky, black hair like Naruto's started to appear. This man's name is Goku and he is your ancestor, but if you could call him anything it would be grandfather. Anyway, he is like you, and will tell you what you are, what you're capable of, and train you till the age of 15, spoke the Shinigami, while pointing to the man that was now with them, who was listening intensely to the conversation. While the Shinigami was speaking to Naruto, Goku was looking intensely at his descendant, sizing him up. Goku finally spoke to Naruto. Hi, how ya doing? Naruto's sweat dropped at this. Anyway, I guess I'm gonna be your trainer till 15 like the Shinigami said. Goku continued to speak after gaining a small nod from his would-be protege. So, did you have any particular training regimen that you are currently doing? Naruto answered his question. Yeah, I have been basically working on my taijutsu, but haven't found a suitable style, besides my parents' style, my ceiling, which I'm around low chunin, and I have good chakra control for my reserves. He added, I've basically tried to keep any high-level training that could alert the village and my family of any training that I'm doing. Goku had put in his thoughts when Naruto had told him all about his current skills. Well, you have no concept of ki, so I guess we'll start there, then we'll start on simple ki manipulation that include flying and ki sensing. I'll also teach you image training to help with you learning high-level techniques without alerting the village. We'll also continue on your taijutsu training as well as stealth. Heck, if you can impress me, I'll even teach you my instant transmission technique. This last technique had piqued Naruto's interest far more than the flying technique. Instant transmission? Naruto asked. Yeah, it allows me to teleport to anything within my range to sense energy, Goku replied. Cool, was Naruto's only reply, while Goku chuckles. Okay, so now the boring part. You need to know about your race, so you'll learn about the Saiyans within your mind tonight, and tomorrow ask your Hokage if you can use a training ground, Goku tells Naruto. Hearing this he nods. And so the long history lesson began. The next day, Naruto was walking into his father's office in order to use for his training. He was inwardly praying that his father's neglect would be deep enough to where he would sign the document, letting Naruto go to a training ground of his choice. When Naruto gave the document to his father, Minato didn't really want to hear anything that Naruto would say, so he signed it without a second thought just to get his son out of his hair. As Naruto left the Hokage's office, he couldn't believe that the entire moment just happened. He put that thought out of his mind, so he could concentrate on getting to his Goku's chosen training ground. The Forest of Death. Yes, the perfect place to hone Naruto's taijutsu, stealth, energy sensing. 7 years later, a figure emerged from the Forest of Death, and the figure was around 4 feet 9 inches and dressed in a worn-out training gi with gauntlet gravity weights on his arms and gravity shin weights on his legs. The figure was Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, and he was now 12 years old. Naruto had grown much in his years of training in the Forest of Death. His chakra levels were around low Jonin with high Chunin control, unlike his ki that is enormous. Goku even commented that his ki level was as high as himself when he fought Buu. His sealing capabilities rivaled both his mother's and father's capabilities. He had learned all of the moves that Goku had to offer him. Naruto was taught Goku's Turtle Hermit Fist, and excelled in it. However, Naruto's greatest achievement to date was learning and perfecting instant transmission to the point where Naruto could perform the technique effortlessly, and without the use of his index and middle fingers. In the village, Naruto is now walking through the village, then out of the corner of his eye he sees a familiar stand with the 3 of 4 people Naruto trusts most. Tsuki, the owner, chef of Ichiraku Ramen, Ayame, one of the 2 chefs in Ichiraku and daughter of Tsuki, Mikoto Uchiha, the matriarch of the Uchiha clan. As his eyes hover over the sight of Tsuki and his daughter, Naruto remembers how he met the father-daughter duo. Flashback no Jutsu. 6 years ago, Naruto was walking through the village, desperate to find something to eat. He had just finished training for today, and he was starving. Unfortunately, most of the restaurants won't service him because he's the demon. That's when Naruto hears a girl-like scream, and all thoughts of food were gone for the moment. He immediately began to extend his senses as to find the origin of the scream. Naruto was able to pinpoint to screams, and find them. As he got closer to the noise, distant words such as, help, no, and, get away, were starting to make their way to Naruto's ear. He quickly veered down an alleyway, but what he would see next would make his blood boil. There were 5 young men, around the age of 16, surrounding a young woman, who was backed against the wall and in a less than appropriate state of dress. 3 of the men had on flak jackets, so he assumed they were Chunin while the other 2 were civilians. Anger seeping into his voice, he called out, "Hey you, don't you know that rape is illegal?" Annoyance and surprise ran through the group of men, while hope within the woman. As they turned towards the person who made the statement, laughter could be heard and you could practically feel the hope in the woman dwindling. Demon Fox, why don't you go run along like a good little pet before we decide to have fun with you too, said one of the men. The temperature suddenly dropped significantly, and all the while Naruto said nothing. With his hair covering his eyes he whirled out of existence. A second later, one of the civilians was on the ground unconscious with a broken, bloody nose. The 3 Chunin, remaining civilian, and captor were shocked at the speed the boy moved at. The boy quickly assumed a stance and whirled out of sight again, this time taking out the last civilian and a Chunin. The last Chunin, seeing this, quickly grabbed the woman by her hair, took out a kunai and held it to the girl's throat. Stay back or I'll kill her, he said in a frightened tone. Whoa, okay, I'm backing off, as Naruto placed his hands in front of him in a complacent manner, while keeping his senses extended. Naruto then slowly backed away, all the while taking his left hand and placing his index and middle fingers on his forehead. The former scared Chunin then turned arrogant. Ha, I knew you didn't have it in you, demon. You wouldn't risk this little whore's life, he continued to drabble while lowering his kunai, thinking he was safe. In that instant, Naruto disappeared and the Chunin thought, where the hell did he go? Before his entire world went black. The woman that was about to be killed was amazed. She had never seen a person move that fast. 1 second he was backing away, then the next he knocked the ninja restraining her out with a hit to the back of the head. She quickly scrambled away from her would-be raper. It was then that she noticed the features of her savior. worn-out clothes showing his athletic build with muscles starting to develop quite nicely, black spiky hair, a rather handsome face that had little baby fat on it, an extremely cute brown monkey tail swaying wildly behind him, and even cuter whisker marks on his cheeks. She blushed at what the kid would look like in a few years. His voice had brought her out of her musings. Hey, are you alright? What's your name? He asked in a gentle, kind voice. Ayame, and yes, I'm fine thanks to YYU, she said with a stutter as she tries to cover her half-form with her hands. Good, so where do you live? Asked Naruto, trying to find out more about this young woman. My father owns the Ichiraku ramen stand in the village, replied Ayame. Oh, okay, just give me a second to get you something more appropriate than the rags you got on as clothes, he said while showing her a spiral tattoo on his arm. He then said, seal release. With a puff of smoke, Naruto now was holding a drawstring bag. He opened the bag to fish out a scroll that had the kanji for clothes on it. With another, seal release, and another puff of smoke, Naruto now held a new, exact replica of his worn-out training GI. He then handed the clothing to her and said, I'll be right around the corner, while you get changed, okay? She just nods, and 10 minutes later she calls Naruto over. Naruto notices the training GI is a little tight on Ayame, but that can't be helped right now. Naruto speaks to Ayame, okay, do you want me to take you through the village to your father's restaurant, or do you want me to get you there without going through the village? I'd rather not be around a lot of people right now, she replied as Naruto nods his head in understanding. Relax, Naruto says as he wraps his arm around Ayame's waist, and places his free hands, index and middle fingers to his forehead. Both of them vanish in an instant. After appearing at the ramen stand, Ayame called of her father and explained what had happened, and Tuki was extremely relieved and grateful to the boy. So, as thanks for the boy deeds, Tuki let the boy have whatever he wanted on the house. Kai. Naruto's eyes next start to roam to the figure of Mikoto, as he remembers how he met her for the first time. Flashback no jutsu. I'm going to go into more detail about the Kushina, Naruto confrontation in the next chapter. It had been a few days since Ayame was nearly raped, and Naruto was walking around the village. He decided to get some ramen before going off into the forest to train for the day. He was just about to sit down and order his meal when he heard someone angrily call his name. Kushina was extremely mad and on the warpath. She had just found out that Naruto was causing trouble again. When she saw him again, she was going to tear him a new one. She spots him near the ramen stand. Naruto, she shouts with fury in her voice. Third point of view. Mikoto was walking through the village in order to get her something to eat besides what the Uchiha clan serves regularly. She had decided on ramen, and wouldn't you know it, Naruto, the son of Kushina, sitting down to eat ramen as well. She thought she could talk to him and see how he and the rest of the family were doing. She had gotten 3/4 the way to the ramen stand when she heard an angry Naruto being projected towards him. Then, there was her best friend, Kushina Uzumaki Namikaze, and she looked mad as hell. Kushina had started to heatedly argue with Naruto, while Naruto was just trying to calm her down. Mikoto heard Kushina saying, "Why can't he be more like his sister?" And when he tried to explain to Kushina what happened, she just snapped. Kushina grabbed a handful of his shirt and slapped him hard. "Speak only when spoken to, you delinquent." Mikoto heard Kushina scream. Mikoto's eyes were exactly like Naruto's, wide-eyed and full of shock. After a few seconds, Naruto broke free from her grip and left with a speed Kushina didn't know he had. Mikoto suddenly wasn't feeling very hungry, so she decided to try to find Naruto. After an hour, Mikoto finally found him. He was standing in front of the Forest of Death, so she began to carefully walk towards him. As Naruto was standing at the entrance of Training Ground 44, he was lost in his own world till he was broken out of it by a rustle of grass. He looked behind him and saw a beautiful woman. Dark hair and eyes, nice figure. Who are you? What do you want? He said in a monotone voice, staring at her with no emotion. Mikoto replies, I'm Mikoto Uchiha, and I'm the best friend of your mother. She ends with a whispered tone on the last word, knowing the trouble he was having with Kushina right now. Naruto just nods his head down at the mere mention of his mother. Not wanting to talk about this anymore, he starts to turn away to go into the forest. Suddenly, Naruto feels something press against the back of his head. He looked around and saw Mikoto embracing him in a loving hug. Naruto, you can't just keep it locked up. You have to let it out, says a sad Mikoto. He tries to fight the hug without hurting her, but he realizes it's futile. The woman just wouldn't let go. He starts to feel liquid dripping onto him, and he turns his head around to see Mikoto crying. Upon seeing this, he couldn't hold back his emotions any longer. A sob racks his body as he begins to cry. He cries over what has happened to him, the assaults, the neglect, everything. As Mikoto stands there holding Naruto's sobbing form, she thinks, Kushina, you stupid fool. What have you done to your son? Kai. Today is Naruto and Naomi's birthday, and Naruto isn't expecting anything to be different. Oh, how wrong he is. A few hours later, when the party begins, everyone was in the Namikaze living room in anticipation for Naomi's gifts, but only 3 people had brought gifts for the Hokage's firstborn, Naruto. All of the adults have already had a few drinks, so they're walking a little funny at the moment. Okay, everybody, it's time for Naomi to start opening her presents. At hearing this, Naomi is ecstatic. As Naomi is tearing through gift after gift, Naruto has opened his 3 gifts and is glad with what he has. From Mikoto, he has a black haori that reached his knees like his father's, and it fits him very well. From Ayame, he was given a huge bowl of birthday ramen made just for him, ultra size. By the time Tsuki was ready to give Naruto his gift, Naruto had already inhaled his birthday ramen. Finally, Tsuki had decided to give Naruto a cookbook. Call it a hunch, but Tsuki had a feeling Naruto would need it one day. At this point of the party, everyone could see Naomi holding 2 giant scrolls and everyone gasping at what they were. Both Jiraiya and Tsunade had wanted Naomi to sign their respective contracts, but they ended up bickering about which contract Naomi would sign. As everyone had their attention on the 2 full-grown Sannin acting like children, Naomi gave an arrogant, smug smile right at her brother. Minato then spoke, all right Naomi, it's time for your final gift. After a lot of thought, I and your mother have decided to give you the title of clan heiress. Mikoto looked shocked and was inwardly seething, they can't. Everyone else looked happy, minus Ichiraku, who looked shocked, for the girl. Naruto doesn't have any readable emotions on his face. She couldn't believe both Minato and Kushina are doing this. As part of a clan herself, she knows that this can only be done if the current heir dies or is expelled from the clan. And if the look on Naruto's face says anything, then he knows what this gift to Naomi means too. Minato, Kushina, can I speak to you really quick? They both nod and head into the kitchen. So, what do you want to talk about, Mikoto? Minato asks. Mikoto couldn't contain herself. Are you guys out of your mind? Do you realize what you are doing to Naruto? They replied, yeah, Naruto hasn't shown any abilities that would make a good clan head, unlike Naomi, so we decided to give her the title of heiress. Suddenly all 3 hears a crash, and ran back into the living room to see what was going on. Flashback no jutsu. A few moments ago, Naomi got up from her position in the living room, and went to hug her brother. She wraps him in a hug. Did you hear that? She begins to whisper arrogantly, Mom and Dad are giving me the title of clan heiress, and then they are throwing you out like the piece of trash you are. Naruto could no longer keep himself calm. He punched her in the gut with one hand, breaking a few of her ribs and forcing her to cough up blood, and then punched her square on the jaw, with the sound of bone cracking filling the surrounding area, knocking her back into a lamp stand, making a loud crash as it hit the floor along with Naomi. Kai, Minato, Kushina, and Mikoto ran through the door to only see an enraged Naruto scowling down at his sister, who was bleeding from the mouth and holding her midsection and jaw gasping. Naruto, what do you think you are doing? Yells Minato, who is shocked at the scene before him. Shut up. You have no right to yell at me after what you two have done. Roared Naruto, finally having enough of how his family treats him. I've taken a lot of shit from this village, along with your neglect and your ridicule. He started shaking uncontrollably, but now, you two crossed the line by giving that arrogant thing my birthright. He started to scream at both Minato and Kushina. Minato started to speak. Naruto, your sister showed Mo. I thought I told you to shut up. Naruto roared at Minato again. She only showed more promise than me because you actually trained her and didn't throw her off to the side like me. Naruto, screaming louder as he continued. With that, Naruto runs upstairs to his room, slamming the door closed upon entering, and preparing to leave this hellhole. He grabs his drawstring bag that has all his worldly possessions, sealing scrolls that contain extra clothes, his gauntlet, shin gravity weights, and his sealing ideas. Naruto then slips out of the window of his room, and begins to levitate in the air. He was about to leave Konoha, but he felt a disturbance. He decided to investigate, and was rewarded with a nearly dead Uchiha clan member. What happened to you? Asked Naruto. Itachi, traitor, kill, clan, the clan member choked out before passing on into the void. So, Itachi went and killed his clan, huh? Thought Naruto, sad that one of the people he trusts had snapped. Naruto then notices the Sharingan still active in the dead Uchiha's head. He decides to take them, thinking, he won't need them and I could use a trump card. He then quickly creates a stasis storage scroll in order to store the eyes till he can implant them into his own eyes. With his work done, Naruto then jumps into the air and begins to fly, at full power, out of the village, not to be heard of by the village for 2 years. 2 weeks after Naruto's departure from the Leaf. We find Naruto traveling to a place unknown to him at the moment by foot as to not attract any unwanted attention, having a mental discussion with his sensei, Goku. Naruto, I think it is about time for you to begin your training to become a Super Saiyan. Goku spoke within Naruto's mind. As Naruto hears this, he gets a shocked and surprised look on his face. He had listened intensely to the stories that Goku had told him concerning the Super Saiyan transformations and much more. Really? You think that I am ready to start that type of training? Naruto thought back, doubting his own abilities and worth. Yes, Naruto. You are more than ready because your ki level is higher than mine when I became a Super Saiyan. Goku tries to assure his protege. You soak up information like a sponge and train harder than me, so I have no doubt you will do fine. Naruto beamed at his sensei's words. Thanks, Sensei. Naruto then got a questioning look in his face. Sensei, if the Super Saiyan transformation is as flashy as you describe, then how will I be initiated without attracting a whole lot of people to my location? Ah, there is the beauty of it. Goku spoke with a triumphant grin on his face. I am going to direct you to Kami's lookout tower where the time chamber resides. The time chamber. The time chamber. Naruto's eyes widen as he hears his sensei speak. Yes, the time chamber. The perfect place for you to train, so you to go as wild as you want. Goku replies, while chuckling at his surprised student. Well then, what are we waiting for? Let's get to training. Mentally shouts in excitement to his sensei. Alright, just let me pinpoint the lookout's location. He begins to focus on where the lookout is currently at. Found it, 23 miles to your left, then go up, Goku says. Naruto then begins to levitate in the air, and then takes off towards his left at full power, eager to start training. It was not long till his sensei mentally spoke, up. Naruto then proceeded to fly straight up into the atmosphere. Naruto begins to see a small dot above him that is increasing rapidly in size as he approaches it. Here we are, Kami's lookout and the time chamber. Goku speaks as the memories of his time here start to flow back to him. Naruto starts to descend towards the front steps of the lookout, his eyes full of wonder at the place. As he lands, Naruto notices a short, chubby-looking man. There is Mr. Popo, Goku says casually. That's Mr. Popo, Naruto thought. His eyes nearly pop out of his head learning this. I was not expecting him to look like this. Hello, young man. Who are you? What are you doing here? Mr. Popo asks in a polite manner. Hello to you, Mr. Popo. My name is Naruto. Mr. Popo facial expression turns from clam to shock as the young man knows his name. I heard about this place through many interesting stories, and I was wondering if it would be possible for me to train here. Naruto, how is it that you know my name? Asked Mr. Popo, curious to how Naruto knows his name. Ah, yes. My sensei told me of you in his many stories of the world during his time, as Naruto remembers the stories he was told. Who is your sensei, young Naruto? Mr. Popo asks. Son Goku, Naruto proclaims proudly. Ah, Goku a very nice man. Mr. Popo replies. He never would stop training for a minute. Yeah, I am kinda the same way. Replied Naruto, agreeing with what Mr. Popo said about his mentor. So, you wanted to come here for training in the time chamber, right? Mr. Popo asks. Naruto nods his head. Alright, you can use it, but you will need to know a few things about the chamber first before you go in. At hearing this, Naruto stiffens ever so slightly, gaining a serious look on his face. First, when you enter the time chamber, you will be able to get an extremely high amount of training done within a short period of time. Naruto nods his head at this, already knowing about it from Goku. Second, you will only be able to stay in the chamber for a maximum of 2 days. This is the longest amount of time the body can withstand being in the chamber, Mr. Popo said with great seriousness in his voice, wanting to get the point across. What would happen if you stayed over the allotted time? Asks Naruto, genuinely curious about the after effects. If you stay in the chamber for longer than 2 days, then you will never be able to leave, Mr. Popo said in a grave tone. Alright, let's get to training. Naruto says enthusiastically. Mr. Popo shakes his head with a small smile on his face. He certainly is his master's student. As Naruto stands at the entrance to the time chamber, Mr. Popo says one last thing. Naruto, there is 2 years worth of food to sustain you in the chamber. Train hard and good luck. Naruto nods his head in thanks as he walks through the entrance, and hears the door close. Inside the time chamber, as Naruto is walking around the room, Goku decides to start his tort. Training. Naruto, what I want you to do first is to take out your gravity weights and put them on, but do not activate them yet. You will have plenty of time for that, as Naruto takes out his drawstring bag via his storage seal located on his shoulder. Naruto finds the scroll containing his weights, and with a quick seal release and a puff of smoke, Naruto then straps on his weights. Alright, now get out onto the training or so we can begin, but don't wander off more than a few feet. As Naruto begins to walk on the gigantic white training ground, the gravity here can fluctuate quite rapidly, but right now it is 10 times the gravity you have been training at. As soon as Naruto gets a few feet away from the resting room, he feels the level of gravity hit him. Damn, this makes things a little more difficult. Naruto says mentally, as he physically struggles to move to this new gravity. Yeah, but you are doing a little better than my son, Gohan, did when he first came here, Goku replies, clearly impressed by what he is seeing. Naruto beams hearing this. What I want to do is get you used to the gravity, and then we can start your Super Saiyan training. Naruto uses this as motivation to get to the real training quicker, and starts to do vigorous physical activities in order to get used to the gravity. 1 hour later, Goku was completely amazed at what was happening. Naruto had gotten the 10 times gravity down in a single hour, while he had gotten it down in nearly 2. Looks like Naruto is ready to begin his ascension, but he is going to have to relive everything that he has been through, thought a cumbersome Goku, at having to put his protege through this. He finally voiced his instruction out loud. Naruto, you have adjusted to the gravity well enough. Now comes the hard part of the training. Naruto hears this, and realizes that, from Goku's stories, he needs to be in a heightened state of rage in order to reach Super Saiyan. Naruto, I want you to raise your power level as high as you can go, and then think back about all of the things that you have been through. Yes, sensei. Ha! Naruto says as he begins to increase his power level. Anha, the time dimension starts to shake from the power that Naruto is releasing. After 15 minutes, Naruto's power is now at maximum strength, and now he begins to remember everything that got him to this moment. Flashback no jutsu. 6 years ago, several days after Naruto saved Ayame from being raped. Naruto had just sat down to order his ramen when he heard an angry sounding, Naruto. He turned to the sound and saw his mother making a beeline straight towards him. Hi Ka-san, why are you so angry? Naruto asks, wondering what he had done to have her angry at him. You know what you have done. You attacked 3 Chunin and 2 civilians without provocation. Arg, why can't you be like your sister? Kushina shrieked so loud that people were staring to notice the scene. Why would I want to be like her? She is an arrogant, selfish, and manipulative bitch, Naruto thinks, then says, Ka-san, I think that you have been greatly misinformed. Slap. He felt a small amount of pain on his cheek, he could not believe it. His mother had just slapped him. She is not even letting me get my side of the story in, he then heard her yell. Speak only when spoken to, you delinquent. He broke free from the grip that she had on him to slap him, and then took off as fast as he could, not wanting to be in her presence any longer. 3 months after Naruto's 3rd birthday, Naruto was running as fast as his tired body would allow him. He had just gotten done with his personal training for the day. Why was he running? Behind him was a huge, angry mob of both civilians and shinobi. Die demon. It is time for us to finish what our beloved Yondaime started and free his son from your demonic control, demon, they shouted, catching up to him with every second. Why are they doing this to me? What have I ever done to them? Where is Tu-chan and Ka-chan? Why aren't they here? He couldn't think anymore because he had felt a kunai sinking into his right calf. Arg. He screamed in pain. Arg. He screamed in pain as he collapsed to the ground. Within an instant, the mob was upon him, beating and torturing him in their crazed rage. They cut him, stabbed him, and kicked him several times. By the time they stopped having fun beating him, they left him there on the street in a growing pool of his own blood, with several broken ribs and a punctured lung. Naruto had long since lost consciousness after being kicked a few times. He didn't know what compassionate soul took pity on him, but he woke up in an alley off of the main road not far from where he'd been left. Looking up, he saw a cloudless inky black sky. He would later come to learn that his parents and sister had been back at the house the entire time, with Naruto not even crossing their minds. After Naomi had gotten the title of heiress. I cannot believe this. They would willingly throw me out of the clan and house. Just to make this arrogant bitch happy. Naruto went on in his mind. They think I did not notice, but when they looked at me for a second, I could see disappointment in their eyes. Why are they disappointed? They haven't taught me a damn thing in 9 years since they started training Naomi. Hell, they haven't even tried to be a mother and father to me. It is always her. Kai. Something snapped within Naruto. He let back his head and let loose an enraged scream, Nuu air. Naruto's spiky, black hair shifted upwards, turning a golden color. His once cerulean blue eyes turn teal green, and a yellow aura appears around Naruto's form as his power level skyrockets. Naruto, Great job on becoming a Super Saiyan, Goku says as Naruto's body begins to shift into a relaxed state. Goki continued, now, what we are going to do is get you used to the transformation so you can become a Super Saiyan at will. You won't need to take as long to transform, and you won't need to use anywhere near as much ki to do it. That way, you can stay in Super Saiyan form for extended periods of time, even indefinitely, when you become strong enough. Alright sensei, but let me try something first, as Naruto took out a blank scroll paper and began writing on it. After a few minutes, he placed the paper on the ground. On the paper was an intricate seal array. Naruto then cut his hand and placed a smear of blood on the seal array, and then made the ram hand sign and said, activate. The seal array started to glow blue, and the smear of blood then started to grow and bulge. A few minutes later, a perfect replica of Naruto formed on top of the seal array. Naruto, what did you just do? Asks Goku. As Naruto listened to his sensei's question, began to think back on how he came across the original new clone technique. Flashback no jutsu. 1 month after Naomi's training began. With both his parents too busy teaching Naomi to bother with him, Naruto decided to discreetly help himself to his parents' scrolls. As Naruto sneaked into his father's office, he started to look in his bookshelf and found a starting book on sealing. Naruto was extremely interested in sealing ever since he had seen his mother and father use it when he was younger, so he decided to borrow the beginner's sealing guide. As he was leaving, something else caught his eye. It was a huge scroll that did not seem to be very important, considering that fact that it had no protection whatsoever. So, Naruto decided to open the scroll and see what was inside. To his amazement, the scroll was filled to the brim with techniques, and so he began to read through the scroll. After 10 minutes of reading, he came across a technique that interested him. The blood clone technique. A variation of the clone technique that is formed by ram hand sign, while adding chakra to the blood of the user. This clone technique is the sturdiest out of all clones because you actually have to kill them like you would kill a human being in order to end the technique, besides the user dispelling the technique. This clone technique also has the properties of the shadow clone technique, which transfers memories of whatever the clone learns to the original and half the chakra of the user. This technique requires half a pint of blood and a quarter of Jonin chakra reserves in order to work. Naruto then snuck out of the office and went to his room to begin Seal's training. Kai. Well, I just took the original technique, the blood clone, and combined it with a seal array that will multiply the cells from the blood I supply to the amount needed to form the clone, while I send the chakra. Said Naruto, speaking in a serious tone. How many can you make, and how long do they last? Goku asked, looking extremely curious and happy at the technique Naruto used. I can make at least 2 more with this one, and not exhaust my reserves, replies Naruto, as Goku gets a dark gleam in his eyes. Make the other clones so you can get started on a more advanced training regimen. Ku. Goku chuckles dementedly at the end, while Naruto thinks. Ah shit. And so the 2 years of the training from hell began. Outside the time chamber. 2 days later, Mr. Popo was tending to his garden when he remembered that Naruto was supposed to come out of the time chamber today. I need to get ready so I can greet Naruto when he comes out of the chamber. He begins to set everything up so he could see how well Naruto's training paid off. At the time chamber entrance, the door to the time chamber opens just as Mr. Popo appears in the line of sight. A young man, around the age of 14, walks out, and he has light blonde hair and teal green eyes. This young man is none other than Naruto. Hello, Naruto. I trust your training went well, asked Mr. Popo, curious as to what the young man was able to do after the 2 years' worth of training he did in the time chamber. Yes, the training went very well, and then some, replies Naruto, in a relaxed tone despite being in his Super Saiyan form. I see you have done the exact same thing that Goku did with his Super Saiyan state, said Mr. Popo, stating the obvious. Yeah, it is unbelievable how natural the transformation feels now that I have mastered it, replies Naruto, proving Mr. Popo's statement true. Mr. Popo, there is a secret that I would like to tell you. It is very personal to me, but I believe you have shown yourself to be an understanding and kind person. Mr. Popo smiles at hearing Naruto say such wonderful things about him, and is touched by the amount of trust that the young man is putting in him. You see, Naruto begins as he tells his life story to Mr. Popo. He explains what happened to him and his sister at birth, his life up to his leaving the village, and finally his trip to the lookout. At the end of it all, Popo is just barely trying to not break down right there. It must have been awful to have had to go through that, Naruto, Mr. Popo sniffles out, trying to hold back the tears that are threatening to fall from his eyes. Naruto simply nods his head at the statement his new friend made. When Mr. Popo got himself under control, he asked, I am curious though if you had made any progress in dealing with this, Kyuubi. Actually, yes I have. I fought him and won, which ended with me obtaining the Kyuubi's chakra and a small piece of his respect. He's still pissed about the fact that I took his chakra, but at least I got him to respect me a little bit from fighting him myself, replies Naruto, thinking back to his fight with Kyuubi. Flashback no jutsu. It had been a year and a half since Naruto began his training in the time chamber, and he was ecstatic. He had mastered the Super Saiyan transformation in the first 6 months of awakening it, and then he began perfecting his key attacks and taijutsu while in the transformation, which took another 6 months, and, finally for the last 6 months, he had been working on increasing his power level in his Super Saiyan transformation. Naruto was now in his mindscape talking to his sensei. Sensei, since you have a connection with the Death God, do you think it would be possible for you to contact him, and asks him to meet me here in my mind? There is something that I would like to discuss with him. A few more minutes of hard concentration from Goku, and Naruto was rewarded with a hard, cold feeling descending around him. A few seconds later the Shinigami appeared. Ah, Naruto, what is it that you wish to speak to me about? It better be good since I don't like my personal time being wasted by trivial matters, spoke the Shinigami in a serious tone. Naruto nodded, and then spoke. You did the sealing of the Kyuubi, correct? The Shinigami nodded his head, wondering where this was going. Yes, I performed the sealing at the behest of the old man Hokage, Sarutobi, and splitted the 2 halves of the Kyuubi's chakra between you and your sister, said the Shinigami. Do you have the key to the seal considering you performed the sealing? Asked Naruto. Yes, I do have the key, but why would you want to know about that? Asked the Shinigami, in an amused tone, already knowing where this conversation will end. Well, I was hoping you could release the seal so I could fight the Kyuubi, said Naruto, his hand rubbing the back of his head absent-mindedly. I'll do you one better. I'll give you the key, so you can release the seal yourself and I along with Goku here will watch, spoke the Shinigami, who materializes 2 chairs from nothing for both he and Goku to sit on and watch the fight. As Naruto walked towards the cage, the Kyuubi, who had been listening to the conversation the entire time, spoke, Little Saiyan monkey, what are you doing? Contempt oozing out of his voice. I'm going to release the seal, and fight you, said Naruto in a jovial tone, as he began to unlock the seal. The Kyuubi just growled at what his container said. The Kyuubi took his chance as soon as the last lock on the seal was released. He brought his arm back and slammed it down upon the seal gate, blasting it open and breaking it off its hinges as well as sending Naruto back several feet. Ha! You insolent monkey! Do you know what you've done? As the Kyuubi continued his boastful victory. You have practically given me my freedom, and after I'm done crushing you into dust I'll get started on your sister. Kyuubi then charges up a Bijudama and fires it right at Naruto. Meanwhile, Naruto is getting up from being sent back at the beginning of the fight. He then noticed a large ball of highly condensed chakra coming straight at him. Naruto is engulfed in a bright light as the Bijudama explodes. Ha 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 ha. You see that? That little monkey was no match for me. Naruto suddenly appears right in front of an extremely surprised Kyuubi. With great speed, strength, and a yell, "Rag!" Naruto kicks Kyuubi on the side of his nose, sending him flying to right of Kyuubi's former position. Naruto disappears, then reappears above Kyuubi, and then brings both hands down on Kyuubi's body and slams him from the air straight to the ground, making tsunamis erupt away Kyuubi's form from the force of Naruto's attack. Naruto then becomes parallel to the ground with his arms and legs spread wide 50 meters above Kyuubi, charging his energy and preparing for his final assault. Kyuubi noticed Naruto above him and started to channel his chakra for his own attack. Both of them redouble their efforts in anticipation for the other's attack, and Naruto positions his hands in front of him. Bijudama. The Kyuubi let loose his gigantic-tailed beast bomb at Naruto. At the last second, Naruto performed instant transmission and appeared right in front of Kyuubi's face. Final flash. Naruto screamed, releasing his attack on Kyuubi at point-blank range. As the blast hit Kyuubi, it exploded, engulfing both Kyuubi and Naruto in an enormous ball of bright light. As the light died down, a broken, beaten Kyuubi but still breathing was seen in a humongous crater, twice the size any Bijudama could make. Naruto then began to take Kyuubi chakra for his own, while Kyuubi, in his extremely weakened form, could only growl at this act. Naruto prevented Kyuubi from influencing him because of his strong will and memories of the people he truly cares for, so Naruto was able to complete the taking of Kyuubi's chakra. Naruto then resealed Kyuubi with the Shiki Fuin Ki the Shinigami gave him, and then fell to his knees completely exhausted. "I won't forget this, Naruto," Kyuubi says, completely exhausted from the battle before deciding to sleep to regain its lost energy. "Don't worry, Kyuubi. I won't treat you badly, just wait a little longer," was his last thought before succumbing to unconsciousness. Meanwhile, with Goku and Shinigami, both overseers had seen both combatants fall into unconsciousness, and both were proud of what Naruto had just accomplished. "Goku, your protege doesn't know the word or the meaning of restraint, does he?" the Shinigami asked Goku. Goku replied, "Nope. He's never even heard the word, and if you think this is bad, you should have seen him when he was training to master the Super Saiyan transformation." The Shinigami sweat drops upon hearing this. "Kai, so, what do you plan on doing now?" Naruto asks his friend, wondering what he is going to do after his training in the time chamber. "I am going to travel the elemental nations to see what is out there and possibly do other things, but I don't know what it is yet," replied Naruto, giving his friend an honest answer. "Well, have a safe journey, and remember, if you need to train in the chamber again, don't hesitate to come here," Mr. Popo says before walking off. "Thanks, I'll be sure to do that," loudly speaks Naruto so his walking friend can hear him. With that, Naruto began walking towards the edge of the lookout only to jump off of it. As he fell, he was suddenly hit by a wave of fear, sadness, and malice thanks to his new sensing capabilities from the Kyuubi's chakra. He quickly flew to where the feelings were originating from. As he got closer, he was able to make out a giant group of people that were facing smaller group of people with 3 people in the front. The middle person was on his knees with a thug-like looking man on his left and a suit-wearing midget on his right. Naruto then noticed the thug-like man unsheath a blade and started to bring it down on the middle man's neck. Seeing this, Naruto quickly performed instant transmission. A few moments before, in the Wave Village, the villagers of Wave were standing in a tight group on a plateau. Across from them were 3 people. The first man was a thug hired by Gato. The second man, Kaiza, was on his knees looking beaten and exhausted, and finally was Gato, the person who had caused the gathering. Behind him was a group of thugs that he had hired. "Now all of you will witness what happens to people who cross me, and let this be a lesson to you on who is in charge of this village." Gato shouts arrogantly, thinking that no one will be able to stop him. Kill him now. The thug that was standing next to Kaiza pulled out a sword and swung it down upon Kaiza's head, only for a young man to appear out of nowhere next to Kaiza. The blade then went through his neck, forcing the image of Kaiza and the young man to shimmer out of existence. Gasp was heard throughout the villagers' side when suddenly said young man and Kaiza appeared in front of them. Not a second later, a cry of Kaiza Koi and Daddy were heard as a woman and a child ran from the front of the crowd to the downed Kaiza. You're lucky that I sensed you, otherwise you would have died, spoke the young man, who had not taken his eyes of the small group of bandits or the midget. Why don't you and your little group of thugs leave before things get nasty? The bandit that had nearly cut off Kaiza's head honestly thought that he could take the young man, so he charged him. Not a second later, the thug had a fist in the gut, and, for added effect, was blasted into the air by some strange energy blast. Leave now or I will kill you all, the black-haired boy said in a cold tone. Gato and his small army of thug began to back away, while Gato thought, this is not over, not by a long shot. When Gato and his thugs were finally gone, the woman, who was down next to Kaiza, suddenly got up and wrapped the young man in a hug, whispering, "Thank you," over and over again. He gently rubbed her back, trying to get her to calm down, whispering sweet nothings in her ear, and when she finally calmed down he spoke, "Hi, my name is Naruto, and not to be nosy, but what is going on here?" "Sorry. My name is Tsunami and you've just saved my husband and Inari's stepfather," Tsunami said, glad that someone had stepped in to save someone she cared about. "But, surely you realize that Gato will come back with much more than just thugs next time, right?" "Then, I'll just have to stay here to protect you guys," replies Naruto. Tsunami starts to tear up again, and repeatedly says, "Thank you." Over the next few weeks, everything was great for both Naruto and Wave. Naruto had learned that Kaiza and a few others were working together to build a bridge in order to get rid of Gato because of his corruption and what it was doing to Wave. Seeing as he had learned of Wave's current history, Naruto decided to tell the family of his own past. The Wave family couldn't believe what had come out of the young man's mouth when he informed them of his past. They were appalled. How could his own parents, sister do that to him and not seemingly care? Other than that day, everything had been going good for Wave since Naruto's appearance. Unfortunately, that was about to change in the next few days. A few days later, Kaiza and a few other workers were working to finish the creation of a bridge that would help them in the future, under the supervision of Tazuna. Suddenly, a thick mist appeared out of nowhere and a dark oppressive force hit the bridge workers and Kaiza. A giant blade suddenly swung down of Kaiza's shocked form until it was stopped by a single hand. The shadowy figure wielding the giant blade traced the hand to its owner, a blonde-haired boy around 14. Naruto was glad that he had decided to oversee the building of the bridge to make sure nothing went wrong. He then heard the shadowy, blade-wielding figure speak, "Hey, kid, why don't you go back to your mommy, so the adults can deal with business?" Naruto's eyes narrowed dangerously at the mommy comment. Naruto replied, "Why don't you tell me what you're doing here, and who you are?" In a tone so cold it left no room for argument. "Fine. I, Zabuza, wielder of the headhunter blade, am here to kill the people you're protecting, so why don't you let me do what I'm being paid for?" A frustrated Zabuza answered. Naruto gained a thoughtful look on his face before answering. "Sorry. No can do. Since you're being paid, I assume Gato is involved." He started in playful tone only to get serious at the question about Gato. He received no answer. "Well, let's see what you can do without that sword of yours." Naruto then, with great strength, ripped the blade out of Zabuza's hands and threw it off to the side. If looks could kill, Naruto would be dead 1,000 times over with the glare Zabuza was giving him. Naruto then assumed the turtle hermit fist stance, and disappeared in a burst of speed. As their fists met, Naruto immediately matched his opponent's strength, but after 5 minutes he became bored. He then began to very slowly increase his strength after every successful hit. Naruto suddenly appeared behind Zabuza, and as Zabuza began an attack on the blonde, blonde, acrobatically backflipped into the air, shifting into a roundhouse kick that nailed Zabuza right in his face, sending him back 10 feet. Zabuza was struggling to get up from that last hit. Grr, what the hell was that? He matched my strength and then it started to increase. Who is he, and how did he get so strong? An extremely frustrated Zabuza thought. He then noticed the kid had raised his hand, and a bright, blue ball appeared seconds later. It's over, he hears the kid say in a monotone voice, and he knows he is about to die. In the trees, outside the battle area, a mist hunter nin crouched on a branch watching the battle. As she sees her target, Zabuza, struggling to get up, she decides to act now. Back to Naruto and Zabuza. As Naruto was about to fire his key attack at Zabuza, he suddenly hears whistling, and then he sees Senbon embed them into Zabuza's neck. Zabuza then falls to the ground dead, and a hunter nin appears over his corpse. Thank you for your help in dealing with my target. I have to leave to dispose of the body now. She and the body then disappears with a Mizu Shushin. Naruto then turns his attention to Kaiza and the other workers, who have their lower jaws on the ground. What? He asked in a casual manner, completely playing off the fact that he just saved them all. 1 week later, Naruto had found this really cute girl walking around, so he decided to try to talk to her. He found out her name, which was Haku, and that she also had a troubled past like him. Hearing her talk about her past, Naruto decided to tell Haku about his, and she was extremely shocked by what he said. She had told him what she was doing, grabbing herbs for a sick friend, and he decided to help her out. Over the next few weeks, they grew very close and he decided to take her out on a date. The date went off without a hitch, with both of them enjoying the time they spent together. Naruto is currently watching the bridge building when he suddenly thought of something. Hunter nins are supposed to destroy the body of a missing nin on sight, but this hunter nin didn't, Naruto thought, while remembering some of the reading he had done in Konoha before he left. With that knowledge, Naruto quickly assumed that the hunter nin was working with Zabuza, and that he would attack again as soon as he was healed. A few days later, as expected, Zabuza and that hunter nin had showed up right as the workers were putting the finishing touches on the bridge. So, I was right about you, hunter nin, Naruto says in a cold voice. I am doing what I have to, Naruto-san, she replies, while Naruto is thinking, how does she know my name and why does she seem so familiar? Naruto performed the ram hand sign, then slammed his hand down onto the ground. Fuinjutsu. Multiple blood clone technique, he yells as a sealing matrix forms on the ground and 2 blood clones start to form within the sealing matrix. Naruto then orders the 2 blood clones to protect the others, while he engages Zabuza. I'm not playing with you this time, Zabuza, Naruto says coldly as he assumes his stance and disappears. He appears in front of Zabuza and punches him in the gut, which makes blood start to flow from his mouth as the sound of ribs cracking is made clear. As Zabuza is hunched over from the devastating punch to his midsection, Naruto raises his hands together and axe slams them down across Zabuza's back, sending him to the ground, creating a small crater from the impact. He would have finished Zabuza off right there, but some incoming memory from one of his blood clones stopped him. When the hunter nin split with Zabuza to take care of the 2 BC Narutos and the workers. BC Naruto 1 and BC Naruto 2 were guarding the workers as their boss fought Zabuza. The clones noticed Zabuza's associate was heading in their direction, so BC Naruto 1 got in a ready stance. The hunter nin just formed one hand sign, and ice mirrors formed around them. It's over, she said, as she stepped in one of the mirrors. She then blurs out of existence, and heads straight at BC Naruto 1, preparing to end it quickly. Suddenly, she feels pain in her midsection, and she looks down. She gasps as sees BC Naruto 1 in front of her with his elbow buried in her gut. BC Naruto 1, while his elbow is buried in her gut, moves his hand to vertically backhand the hunter nin, nailing her in the face. She is sent back a few feet, and her mask shattering could be heard. As she was slowly getting up, BC Naruto 1 got a good look at her face. He gasped, and quickly dispelled, informing the original of what just transpired. Back with Naruto and Zabuza. Receiving the memory transfer, Naruto quickly turns around to face the now revealed hunter nin. He begins to walk towards her. Haku CC-chan, he stutters, not believing that this is happening. Naruto-kun, I'm sorry you had to find out this way, she said in a sad tone, wishing this didn't happen. Why? He asks, wanting to know why this happened. Because, like I said before, I did what I had to do. Zabuza-sama was the one that saved me, gave me a purpose, she said as tears fell from her eyes. Naruto just stares at her in sorrow. Haku's eyes widen suddenly, then she says quickly, sorry, Naruto-kun, but this is the last time. She then vanishes, and a second later Naruto heard a squelch. He turns around and his eyes widen in shock and fear at the sight before him. A man standing over Zabuza, in front of Haku, who had a sword through her chest. The man then pushed Haku off his sword, and tuned to a shaking Naruto, hey, thanks kid for dealing with Zabuza, all that was left was to deal with his little bitch follower. The man says uncaringly, I knew the bitch would sacrifice her life just to save him, but you can't save what already dead. Suddenly, Naruto hears a voice speak. He, so the baby demon is dead, shame about his little bitch though, my men could have used her for some fun, the now revealed Gato said arrogantly, having a group of thugs at his back. As he talked, he strolled down to where the bodies of Zabuza and Haku are. He then kicks Haku's face, knocking her head to the other side. With that act, Naruto releases his anger and snaps. Nanuraj. Naruto screams in rage, as he rears his head back, his aura flaring to life with electricity starting to arc around his form. RRU, his hair started to shift upwards even more and was sporting a single bang down the front of his face, RRAHA. As a bright light surrounds Naruto. As the light dies down, Naruto becomes visible with a violent aura around him, electricity arcing wildly. The ground around him is devastated with huge chunks of earth missing, no doubt from the power that he released going into Super Saiyan 2. His face is stone cold, which is scaring the living hell out of everyone else there, Gato included. Naruto assumed a stance, with his left arm positioned in front with his palm facing out, and his right arm positioned behind him with a golden ball of ki in his hand. Think Goku's stance when he fought Cell, except with a golden ball of ki in his right hand. Then Naruto disappeared and reappeared to the side of the man who killed Haku. Naruto pivoted his hips, and swung his left arm sending the man upwards into the air, and then Naruto appeared above the man then slammed his right ki-filled hand into the man's gut. Naruto fired his ki blasts, with the man still on his ki ball, towards the small army of thugs. As the ball descends it grows bigger, engulfing the thugs, eradicating them along with the surrounding area. Naruto vanishes from his present location, and appears behind the last man left, Gato. Gato was scared out of his wits seeing this young man completely decimate his forces as he speaks in a frightened, desperate tone. Wait. Whatever you want ICC can G give it to you. M money, P power, W women. Whatever you want. As he looked at Gato's terrified face Naruto said, I want you dead, emotionlessly. Naruto then snaps his neck easily. He then hears cheering. He looks around and sees the entire village near the crater he caused, and looking happy that Gato is finally gone. At the front was Inari, who had gathered the villagers together after a blood clone. Naruto left at the house just in case, saved him and his mom from being kidnapped by thugs. It was at this point that Goku screamed in his mind, Naruto, Check where Haku is. She's still alive. Naruto's eyes widened at this, and he made his way to where Haku and Zabuza are. Help! Someone get a doctor now! Naruto screams, desperate to not lose the girl he had grown to care for in the past month. He then channeled his ki into her as a desperation attempt to keep her alive till help arrived. 5 hours later, Naruto had been by Haku's side for the past 5 hours, and he had no intentions of leaving. Hell, the doctors didn't want him to leave, since his energy was the only thing keeping the girl alive. He was ecstatic and relived when Haku's eyes began to flutter open, and he grabbed her hand and held it gently. Haku-chan, are you okay? Are you hurt anywhere? He asks gently, worried for her health. Naruto-kun. Suddenly she tries to sit up, but Naruto gently stops her. Naruto-kun, where's Zabuza-sama? Is he? Everything is okay. Zabuza is beaten up, but he'll live and so will you. He ended in a tone full of care and relief. Haku, I'm going to have to leave soon, but don't worry, I'll be back for you, he says as he notices her expression of fear. Haku then tries her luck and brings her face close to Naruto's and kisses him. Once he is out of his own world, Naruto reciprocates the kiss. 2 hours later, as Naruto stands at the exit of Wave, he remembers the agreement he had with the villagers of Wave and of Zabuza and Haku. How the village's builders would begin working to create a new ninja village within Nami where both Zabuza and Haku teach taijutsu, kenjutsu, and stealth to any young who wanted to try to be a ninja. In addition, Naruto would leave behind a blood clone to teach everyone about ki. The villagers had decided for Naruto to be their cage as a thank you for saving their village from Gato and considering his strength. Naruto then left the Wave village for Kami's lookout in order to gain mastery over his new Ascended Saiyan transformation. Little did he know that this new village would be greatly known throughout the elemental nations in the future. It would be known by one name: Namagakure. In Konoha, just after Naruto's outburst. After they all heard Naruto's bedroom door slam shut, Minato and Kushina turned their attention to their daughter to find out if she was alright. What they saw when they got close shocked them to the core. There was Naomi, gasping and panting in agony, favoring the ribs on her right side, while blood ran freely down her face from her nose and mouth. The right side of her jaw had swollen to more than 3 times its normal size, and was discolored blood red and dark purple. Her right eye was also beginning to shut at the bottom from the swelling on her jaw and cheek. Naomi. Kushina cried out in shock and fear for her daughter's health as she ran over to her and knelt down to cradle her. Minato called out, Tsunade. We need your help over here. Tsunade ran over and gasped upon seeing Naomi's condition. She immediately began making hand signs before green chakra started to envelop her right hand. Running her hand over Naomi's face and body, she turned to Minato and Kushina. We need to get her to the hospital. Now, she ordered. Minato and Kushina didn't think twice. Minato picked up his daughter and both parents immediately made their way to the hospital, intent on getting their daughter the medical attention she needed. Once Tsunade and her staff had finished patching Naomi up, Minato and Kushina bade her goodnight and left the hospital to return home, both of them furious with Naruto for hurting her so badly. Naruto had broken her jaw, fractured her cheekbone, and left her with 4 broken ribs. Once they returned home, they sat in the living room for hours waiting for Naruto, only leaving to check his room to see if he had snuck back in through his window. When 2 o'clock the next morning rolled around, both of them decided to call it a night. They would make sure that Naruto received the beating of his life for what he did to his sister. Upon waking up that morning, both of them scoured the house, but had found no signs of Naruto. He hadn't come back home last night. Their first thoughts were that he was putting off the punishment that he knew was coming, which would only make his punishment that much worse. Minato went into the office while Kushina left to spend some time with her daughter, but not before making a shadow clone to wait for Naruto at home. 8 hours after she had left the house, Kushina had finally returned home, only to see her shadow clone still there waiting. Her clone looked at her and shook her head in the negative before dispelling. Naruto still hadn't come back home. She went through her nightly routine as Minato came back to the house of making dinner and preparing for bed. Both Minato and Kushina each created a shadow clone to wait up all night. They were not going to miss Naruto's return home, and he was not going to get away with what he'd done. The second day proceeded much the same way that the previous day had, with Naruto still not returning home. Upon seeing that Naruto still had not returned home by the morning of the third day, Kushina's anger turned to worry. Where was he? What would keep him away from his home for 3 full days? Granted, it wasn't supposed to be his home that much longer, but he certainly didn't know that, did he? And even if he did, Kushina would at least make sure this wouldn't come to be. As much of a bad apple as he was still her son. And she'd be damned if she would let him be thrown out into the cold. Minato, she said to her husband that morning before he left for the office, I'm starting to get worried. Worried? Why? What do you mean, why? Our son hasn't been home in 3 days. Minato looked at her in confusion before giving her a dismissive, carefree smirk. It's probably just as well. This isn't his home anymore, anyway, you know that. What's that supposed to mean? She snapped back indignantly. He may not be our heir anymore, but he's still our son, and I won't allow him to be thrown out of this house. Minato just laughed before flashing away, leaving Kushina with a bewildered expression and a bad feeling in her gut. She decided to create 2 shadow clones today, one to visit Naomi and the other to wait for Naruto to hopefully return to the house. She would spend the day trying to find her son in the hope that something terrible hadn't happened. Mikoto Uchiha was a nervous wreck. She had been wandering around frantically asking any of the people that Naruto was on good terms with if they had seen him. She had gone to the Ichirakus and talked to both of them, though they hadn't seen him, either. Tsuki and Ayame were just as worried as Mikoto was. Naruto ate lunch there every single day without fail, and something horrible must have happened for him not to show up there. Naruto had also won over all of Tsuki's regular lunchtime patrons with his kind and friendly ways. Even those who had hated him at first couldn't help but warm up to him once they had gotten to know him. They were just as worried as Mikoto and the Ichirakus, knowing that Naruto's absence from the stand was a very bad sign. When they even closed up shop for a few days in an effort to help Mikoto look for the boy, his customers also lent what aid they could to help find him. Unfortunately, all of their efforts were for naught. After 4 days of searching, Mikoto knew that if Naruto wanted to be found, he would have been by now. He had left the village. And it was all those damn Namikaze's faults. Kushina was now beyond worried. She was frantic and terrified. It had been 2 full days since she'd started actively searching not only the village, but the surrounding areas in an effort to find her missing son. She became even more frantic when she started to see just how little she had thought about him before all of this happened. Last night, as she was preparing dinner, she prepared her habitual 3 places at the table, only to realize that Naomi was still in the hospital, so she removed one of them. Thoughts of Naomi led her to thoughts on how she ended up in the hospital, which led her thoughts to Naruto. Why hadn't she prepared a place for him at the dinner table? Exclamation mark. Recounting as many times as she could have when she had set the table, she always saw only 3 places there. When was the last time she had prepared Naruto a meal? This realization had prompted her to drop what she was doing and head back out for another round of searching right then and there. She didn't even bother creating a clone to visit Naomi or wait at the house for the next day. She hadn't spoken to Minato since then, and she hadn't spent the night at home, either, opting to search through the night and well into the morning in the hopes of finding Naruto. The sun was currently approaching its high noonday position. As she leapt through the trees, so many questions plagued her mind. Where could he have gone? Was he alright, or did something happen to him? Was he laying hurt or dead somewhere? These questions had prompted her to reflect on her relationship with him. When she thought back, she realized that she couldn't recall any moments or times that would show the two of them as having any kind of relationship with each other, at least, none to speak of. Was there a time where she spoke to him where she wasn't angry about something? She then started to recall all of the trouble she saw him getting into, only to realize that she had never actually seen any of it. All she had to go on concerning Naruto's troublemaking ways was hearsay. When did she ever ask Naruto's accusers to prove what had happened? And what about when she got Naruto's side of the story? She stopped dead in her tracks as she gasped loudly. When had she ever gotten his side of the story? Come to think of it, whenever she saw him, he never caused any trouble. In fact, any time Naomi taunted him at home, he usually ignored her or got up and walked away. In fact, what he did to Naomi on their birthday was completely unlike anything she'd ever seen him do before. He didn't cause trouble at home, he was usually doing things like, what, exactly? She realized that she didn't know what he did. She didn't even know what he liked to do. In fact, the only people that she knew really cared for her son were Mikoto Uchiha and the Ichirakus. And she only knew that because she saw how they responded to the announcement of Naomi's being named heir to the clan. Who were his friends? Did he even have any? Naruto, when I find you, I promise you I'm going to be a better mother to you from now on. Please, just be okay, she thought to herself, hoping that Naruto might by some miracle sense her sentiment. Wait a minute, Ichirakus. If there was one thing she did know about her son, it was that Naruto loved their food. Maybe they've seen him. She began to feel a glimmer of hope as she sped back to the village intent on getting to the ramen stand. Upon returning to the village, she made her way to the ramen stand, only to see the metal gates pulled down with a sign posted saying, "Closed until Monday." Why? Why did Tuki close up shop? That wasn't like him. He loved his job, and the only reasons she could think of for him to ever close up shop would be that he was on his deathbed or in the hospital, or if Ayame was sick or missing. Missing. Was he also searching for Naruto? He hadn't even come here. Kushina began to hyperventilate as terror-stricken panic seemed to seize her. She collapsed to her knees and put her hand to her chest in an effort to calm herself. As she closed her eyes, she worked as hard as she could to calm herself down. She took deliberate, painstakingly slow breaths. She thought of happy times, happy places. She made a concerted last-ditch effort to calm herself down by imagining all of the happy times that she would have, and the happy memories that she would create with Naruto as soon as she found him and brought him home. Sensing herself growing calmer and relaxing, she slowly stood up and worked to get her bearings. Looking around, she saw that many of the passers-by had stopped and were looking at her in concern. "I'm fine, everyone," she reassured them all, prompting them to all to go on their way, before she called out and stopped them all, "Wait a moment." As they stopped and turned to her, she asked them all with genuine concern, "I don't suppose any of you have seen my son in the last few days, have you?" They all responded in the negative, thought some did it with a sneer or a derogatory comment about how they hadn't seen the worthless demon trash, or other such insults. Such comments caused Kushina to release some killing intent unconsciously, making everyone move along rather quickly. Well, who else can I talk to that might know something? She thought to herself once more as she went through the people she knew in her mind. It suddenly hit her, Mikoto. But that idea went just as quickly as it came. No. She just lost her entire clan except for her son. She has enough to worry about right now. I should leave her alone. But I'm running out of options. What should I do? I can't think of anyone else, and Ichiraku's doesn't open again for 3 more days. She moved on, choosing to continue searching on her own until the ramen stand opened back up. 8 days. It had been 8 days since the twins' birthday, and there was still no sign of Naruto anywhere. Minato had told her to give up, as Naruto wasn't their problem anymore. He had learned the hard way that this was the wrong thing to say to the frantic mother. Kushina had almost gone feral when Minato had told her to give up on finding the failure, catching him completely off guard, throwing him to the ground and kicking him where it would hurt the most, his jewels. She had relentlessly assaulted his groin before attacking his face and beating him black, blue and bloody. Only when the Anbu had showed up when Minato flared his chakra had Kushina been restrained and the Hokage brought to the hospital to receive medical attention. The injuries to his face weren't serious, he would heal from those without even scarring. But his manhood was another matter. Minato didn't even want to know the extent of the damage to his goods, but he walked out of the hospital with the knowledge that he would never father children ever again. That had angered him, but this was his wife. He loved her, and he had kept things from her. He thought that maybe what she'd done to him was fair, and that maybe she'd call it even after being so upset from what Minato had persuaded her to do in endorsing his plan of naming Naomi their heir. Naomi was still in the hospital undergoing observation. Minato would be coming out of the hospital today, no doubt expecting an apology from her for his injuries. Kushina chuckled bitterly at the idea. There was no way in hell that she would give him one. What she did to him, he had coming. And if he didn't change his ways quickly, she might just leave him and move out. That way, she could give Naruto a new home without fear of Minato and Naomi making things hard for him. Ichiraku Ramen came into her sight, and to her relief, the stand was open. She ran to the stand and pulled the flap open, allowing her entry. She looked around, seeing several people eating several variations of Tsuki's delectable noodles. Her eyes stopped as they focused on a head of flowing black hair. Mikoto, she called out, running up to the bar next to her friend and taking the empty seat to her right. You, she responded coldly when she caught sight of Kushina, what do you want? Kushina was unnerved at the coldness in Mikoto's expression, as well as the disgust in her voice. Finding her courage, Kushina replied, Mikoto, listen, I'm so sorry about your clan and family. I know that you're going through a difficult time right now, but you think my feelings towards you have anything to do with my grieving over my. Mikoto began incredulously, interrupting Kushina before being interrupted herself. Mikoto, have you seen my son since his birthday? Mikoto's eyes went wide in shock. She couldn't believe the audacity of this woman who threw her son out of her home and family without even so much as a guilty look. But on the other hand, she could hear the desperation in Kushina's question. Upon looking more closely at Kushina, it was easy to see the dark circles under her eyes, and that her skin was paler than usual. She was exhausted and frightened. She hadn't slept well in days. She also looked thinner, indicating that she wasn't eating right, either. Mikoto's flabbergasted gape softened into a confused frown. Why do you even care? It's not like you ever cared before. Kushina's desperation caused her to yell at the woman, look, I don't know what you think of me at the moment, and to be honest, that doesn't matter right now. I have no idea where my son is, and I've been running myself ragged trying to find him. Do you know where he is or not? Mikoto yelled back, you've already made it public knowledge that you don't want to concern yourself with him anymore. You kicked him out of your family and out of your home. No, I didn't kick him out of my home, and I'm not going to. He may have stopped being our heir, but that doesn't change the fact that he's my son. I know what's usually done when a living heir is removed, but I'm not going to let that happen to him. She yelled back, prompting Mikoto to stand and drum Kushina across the face with her open right hand, sending her out of her seat and sprawling to the floor. While this was happening, murmurs could be heard from the other patrons. Kushina was rather surprised to hear some of the questions being asked. The Hokage and his wife kicked Naruto out. Why would they do that to a great kid like Naruto? How could the Hokage do that to his son and then preach about how the village is like a family? Shocked, are you? Mikoto shouted at the top of her lungs, now enraged at Kushina. That was how Naruto felt when you slapped him. And don't you dare try to insult my intelligence by telling me that you intend to keep Naruto at home after you've banished him from your clan and family. You know full well that when an heir is banished from a clan, that you no longer have any legal right to provide them with shelter. What? Kushina breathed out, in shock at this revelation as tears began to escape her eyes. No, I didn't know, no, that can't be. What the hell's going on out there? Tuki could be heard yelling from the back as he came running up to the front of the store so he could see what all the commotion was about. Ayame was hot on his heels. Kushina leapt to her feet, forgetting about Mikoto's slap, and called out in a tear-filled yell, "Tuki!" Kushina! He exclaimed, surprised at her appearance, despite the fact that he didn't want her in his stand. "You have a..." Kushina immediately interrupted him, tears of frightened desperation flowing freely down her face. "Tuki, please. I need to know if you know anything at all about where my son is. I've been searching for him 6 days, and I haven't slept at all in the last 3. I've searched the village high and low, and I've also searched every square inch in a 30-mile radius. Please, if you know anything, tell me where he is." She broke down into sobs and collapsed to her knees. Neither Mikoto nor Tuki could remain angry at the pathetic sight before them. Ayame, however, was a different story. "If you haven't found him by now, you're never going to," she yelled, prompting Kushina to open her eyes and bring her head up to look at the girl, though she didn't stop sobbing. Ayame continued, "The only thing we can say for sure is that he's left the village. If he doesn't want to be found, he's not going to be. And I'm sure that you and that," Ayame gritted her teeth, "that monster that you're married to are the last people he wants to be found by. Get out of our stand. You and your family aren't welcome here anymore." Kushina winced and cried even harder at Ayame's cruel words. Ayame simply turned on her heel and ran into the back, crying herself. She looked to Tuki and Mikoto with a pleading look in her eyes. The two of them looked conflicted in their feelings. On the one hand, they'd seen the callousness with which she could treat her son, but on the other hand, they'd never seen her this concerned or this frantic over anyone before, not even Naomi. "Please," Kushina pleaded more quietly, "I know you're both angry with me, and you have every right to be. I know that up to now, I've failed Naruto as a mother. Since I've been searching, I've had nothing but time to think about things. As I said, I haven't slept. I've been eating erratically. She began to wobble unsteadily before her eyes rolled into the back of her head and she collapsed. Mikoto, thankfully, was able to move fast enough to catch her. She looked at Tuki, who looked bewildered, not knowing what to think about this whole scenario. Mikoto put a hand to Kushina's forehead and snapped her gaze to Tuki. "She's burning up." Mikoto reached out with her chakra to see if she could get a read on Kushina's condition, and her chakra's almost depleted. I don't think she was kidding when she said she hasn't been sleeping or eating. "Ayame," Tuki called to his daughter, who came back out after a few seconds. It was clear that she'd been crying, but she immediately stopped when she saw a passed-out Kushina being held up by Mikoto. Tuki instructed his daughter, "I need you to handle things here for a while. We need to get Kushina to the hospital." Ayame just nodded dumbly as Tuki took Kushina from Mikoto's arms while she flared her chakra brilliantly so that an Anbu could respond and find them. When a hawk-masked Anbu came, he saw Kushina's condition. Without even needing to be told what to do, he grabbed the woman, said one word, "Hospital," to Mikoto and Tuki, who both nodded, and used Shunshin to take Kushina to the hospital. Mikoto placed a hand on Tuki and used Shunshin herself to get the two of them there faster. On the street just outside the ramen stand, one Asuma Sarutobi was just returning from a mission, and just happened to overhear the conversation that took place inside the ramen stand. He didn't like what he heard at all, and decided that his report could wait. He could use a meal, and it sounded like the ramen stand would also be the best place to get some answers. Kushina had been admitted to Konoha Hospital for chakra depletion, sleep deprivation and dehydration. She really hadn't been taking care of her most basic needs in her preoccupation towards finding her son. Neither Tsuki nor Mikoto had any idea what to make of this. Was it possible that Kushina really didn't know that it was against the law in Konoha to allow a disowned clan heir to live on clan property? They had been waiting for 2 hours in the hospital's main lobby, waiting to hear on Kushina's condition. As they were waiting, they saw Minato making his way through the main lobby on his way out. He looked terrible. His face was bruised and discolored black, blue and dark purple, and he waddled from side to side, grimacing with each step, as though walking was extremely painful for him. When had he been admitted to the hospital, and why? Both of them looked at the man with loathing and utter disgust. Minato caught sight of the two and waved at them with a friendly smile. As he made his way over to them, Mikoto's face morphed into a furious grimace as she marched right up to him and slapped him hard across the face, right before spitting in it, shocking not only the Hokage, but every onlooker in the room. "What was that all about, Mikoto?" he asked, stunned to near silence by her shocking actions. "You know what that was about, you evil monster." Mikoto screamed at him, causing him to recoil in further surprise while murmurs could be heard all around. "That was for kicking your son out of your family so heartlessly." Again, the rumors could be heard. The Hokage did what to his son? But he's always talking about how the village is a family. Would he really do something like that? If he did that to his own son, what would he do to the rest of us if it suited him? Minato started feeling apprehensive at the comments going around. He turned to Mikoto and told her discreetly, "Can we talk about this more at another time, and in an area that's not so public?" "Oh, you'd like that, wouldn't you?" Mikoto yelled back. "What's wrong? Too much of a coward to take responsibility for your actions? Huh? This is neither the time nor the place, Mikoto." Minato growled back through gritted teeth. "And why is?" Mikoto began anew, only to stop when Tsuki put a hand on her shoulder. He gave her an understanding glance, at which she turned around and walked off, returning to her seat. "Thanks, Tsuki," Minato expressed. Tsuki's response was to face the Hokage with a grim expression. "From this day forward, you and your family are no longer welcome in my establishment. Don't ever show your faces there, again." "Tsuki, come on," Minato objected. "No, not after what you did to your son. Unlike you, we love Naruto, and his persecutors are our enemies, too." Tsuki also returned to his seat after having said what he needed to say. Minato again looked around and caught a few additional murmurs that everyone else in the lobby was uttering out. "It looks like our Hokage isn't who he claims to be. How could he and his family be so hypocritical? What's the big deal? So he threw the demon out of his family." That last comment made Mikoto snap. She charged at the man who said it, enraged, and proceeded to pound him senseless. It took a couple of Anbu and several orderlies to remove Mikoto from the man and restrain her while they took him back for immediate treatment. Most of them remarked at the irony of the situation. A man actually got injured and severely beaten at the hospital. Mikoto didn't know what his condition was, she frankly didn't care. Minato left the hospital to the Anbu that was outside waiting for him so that he could get to his office. On his way out, however, he couldn't help but ponder what had happened. He never anticipated such a backlash for kicking the failure out of his house. He didn't realize that there were so many people in the village that actually liked the boy, despite his own efforts. If this kept up, he might be dealing with riots, and possibly even civil war, depending on how this whole situation might escalate. He was no fool. He knew how quickly word spread in his village, and if the people's responses in the hospital were any indicator, then rough times were indeed ahead. His future as Hokage was starting to look a little more uncertain. He needed to start planning to keep his village under control. Naomi was the child of prophecy, so setting her aside for her failure of a brother was not an option that he even going to entertain. He would not allow Naruto back into the family, and he would not acknowledge that he did anything wrong. But if he didn't do that, then what would happen? There was no point in thinking about that right now. He needed to get back to work. He could use his power as Hokage to contain this situation, and for now, that would have to do. Roughly an hour later, Shizune came into the lobby and called for Mikoto and Tuki. Both of them responded immediately and went to her. Kushina is going to be fine. We're rehydrating her and feeding her intravenously, and she's currently asleep in the recovery ward, she explained to the two of them. Thank you, Shizune. When will she be able to receive visitors? Mikoto asked, relieved that Kushina would be okay. Well, my guess is that she'll be out for at least the next several hours. You're welcome to wait in her room until she wakes up. It's room 247 just down this hallway. We'd like that, Tuki answered before adding, oh, and we saw the Hokage coming out of the lobby, he looked pretty banged up. Can you tell us anything about that? Shizune pursed her lips together before asking the two of them to follow her into an empty room. Once they were in there, she closed the door and explained what she knew, that Minato told her to give up on finding the failure because he wasn't their problem anymore, that Kushina had attacked Minato in a rage, and sterilized